Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and for this video, we're going to be doing a build on Varre's Bouquet. The main point of this video literally is going to be facing the fire giant, but we're also going to talk about the build for it, how good it is, and if it's really as bad as we all think it is. Let's get into the details. Also, I want to mention real quick, if you're not on the Discord has been blowing up lately. It's going to be in the description. Definitely join that, and you're going to want to wait to the end of this video because there's going to be a little bit of an announcement for that as well, so be sure to stay tuned. Also, if you're not subbed, be sure to sub too. This community's been awesome so far. If you want a good Elden Ring community, this is definitely one you're going to want to sub to. Now, let's get into the details on Varre's Bouquet and how bad it really is, or how good it really is. Let's find out. This is New Game Plus 7 max scaling, by the way, and about half this video, literally half or a little more, is going to be the fight with the fire giant because Varre's Bouquet is not that good. Here's the thing about Varre's Bouquet. The concept behind it is awesome. The concept behind it essentially is giving you a weapon that has, depending on whether you have 60 to 80 arcane, it's going to give you anywhere from 130 to 140 natural bleed on it, which is an incredible amount for a weapon that hits fast. And the concept behind that is simply that you're able to put grease or blood flame blade on it. In this case, grease is better, and that'll scale with the arcane, possibly giving you over 200 bleed per hit. But there's one problem with that. It does basically no damage in between procs. Yeah, so literally the AR on this thing maxed out at plus 10. I have 60 arcane and around 30 dexterity. You can go to 60 dexterity. Trust me, it doesn't really matter at all. You're going to get between 300 and 400 damage on hit. It's going to feel like nothing for a weapon that's maxed out at plus 10. For those that don't know, by the way, you get Varre's Bouquet from finishing Varre's questline. Once you get to Mogwyn Palace, I'm not going to show it in this video because this video is around 10 minutes and it's long enough, but once you get to Mogwyn Palace, before Mog, right at the end of the cavern that you're in, there's a little bit of a summon sign. I don't know why I said a little bit of, but there's a summon sign where White Mask Varre is, and then you can invade his world, essentially, killing him, and then after you talk to him, he'll end up dying, and after he dies, he will drop Varre's Bouquet, one of probably the worst weapons in Elden Ring. Now, the Ash of War Blood Tax, which you think would do a substantial amount of damage with all the hits, even stacked together, it's really just good for the bleed buildup, as is the weapon in general. The damage itself, you're going to see on here, it's pretty much negligible. We're even hitting the fire giant's weak points in this case, and we're not getting much damage out of it at all, which is clearly a little bit of a disappointment. And if somebody is wondering how many tries this took me, it only took 4, but it felt like forever. This had to be 30 minutes over the course of 4 tries because each try was probably between 5 and 7 minutes. And unfortunately, I got killed all 3 first tries at the very end on what needed to be the last proc, essentially, on the fire giant, where he just spammed a lot of stuff. And you're going to see him do it again at the end of this clip, and I almost die, but I managed to survive it. Point being is, they were very, very long fights. Though it only took 4, it felt more like 10 to 15. It was definitely something where this is not a quick way of defeating the fire giant, even though it does proc bleed incredibly fast. And again, using blood tax or the regular hits doesn't matter. It's going to proc bleed really quickly because with the fact that we're using blood grease, we're able to get a substantial amount of bleed buildup. And that blood grease will actually scale with the arcane on just a few weapons in the game, the Ripple Blade and Varre's Bouquet being 2 of them. I forget what the third one is because they naturally scale with arcane while also allowing you to put blood grease on it. That way the blood grease will scale with the arcane as well, hence giving you more bleed on the grease on top of the innate bleed, again, which we mentioned, which is already a lot. And let's get into the second phase of the fire giant. As you can see, that took a fair bit. And on to the second phase of the fire giant, where we're going to have to take on the tougher phase, at least for me. Some people think the first phase is tougher. For me, I always find the second phase tougher because his weak points are harder to hit. And typically, if you're using melee weapons, you're going to be behind him, hitting areas where you're not going to get a lot of damage. But once again, we are going for bleed procs after all, so it can't be that bad, right? Well, let's see. By the way, I didn't have my external drive hooked up for this, so I was stuck taking minutes clips, literally minute clips in 180p on Xbox. They really got to up the recording for that. I use an external drive sometimes, but anyway, for this, so I ended up missing a small clip here when I was clipping it all together. It is a little frustrating to have to record that way because I'm on Series X. They definitely need to upgrade the ability to record on that because a minute in 180p is just, that's just crazy low. Thankfully, I have an external drive now, which I can use for longer videos, but long story short, tiny bit missing there, but we didn't do any damage. And why didn't we do any damage? We didn't do any damage because we didn't actually hit him, but if we were hitting him, it wouldn't have mattered, because as you've seen with this entire fight so far, the damage in between the procs, and there were a lot of procs, is literally negligible. The Fire Giant has 64,000 HP on New Game Plus 7, and here we are hitting him with what feels like hitting him with a bouquet of flowers. And you're going to see at the end here, he's going to start to spam a whole bunch of stuff. You're going to see that in short order, and that's what happened to me the first 3 tries. Literally had just a tiny bit of HP 3 times in a row. I was actually getting a little bit frustrated, which I rarely do in Elden Ring now. I've learned how to just chill and be able to take on balls, especially when you're doing something like challenging like this using Varre's Bouquet. It was a little bit frustrating even with that said, because of the fact that he literally had 1 proc essentially 3 times in a row, spammed all of his fire moves on me, and I just couldn't survive it. And therein lies the issue with Varre's Bouquet, and as you've seen before with the Scavenger curved swords and several other weapons in Elden Ring, the damage in between procs is actually reasonable, so that when procking becomes harder, because as you continue to proc bleed, each next one is additional times that you're going to have to hit the enemy to proc it. For example, 300, 500, 700. In between procs, most weapons will give you damage. This is not one of them. With that being said, it was a tough, close fight with the Fire Giant, but as you can see here, we're going to end up taking him down, like I said, on the 4th try, and although he was very spammy at the end, made it very difficult for me to ultimately take him down, Varre's Bouquet was able to do it, and I know some people are going to think, well, you took the Fire Giant down on max scaling, so Varre's Bouquet can't be that bad. Varre's Bouquet can't be one of the worst weapons in Elden Ring if you're able to do that. You can beat the Fire Giant with a lot of different weapons, especially if you know his moveset. His first phase, for me, I think is easier because you can just continuously attack his ankle. But long story short, Varre's Bouquet, in between procs, does basically no damage, hence making it, for me, absolutely a bottom 10 and maybe even a bottom 5 weapon in the game. You're going to see that even further at Gatefront here, which I usually use as like my test dummies for like seeing how much damage I can do with any given build. And it's Gatefront, so even on New Game Plus 7, Journey 8 we're on currently, it's never going to be challenging by any means. But there's an issue here. As you can see with Varre's Bouquet, it is a little bit of a challenge to get damage out of it, because essentially what you're hoping for is bleed procs and only bleed procs, and in between hits, even on regular enemies, you can see the damage is so negligible. It's actually incredible to see basically nothing come off when you hit them with a plus 10 weapon. Hence, making it kind of shockingly bad. Aside from the bleed procs, Varre's Bouquet is not something that I can recommend, but this is a solid build for it if it's something for some reason you want to use. Let's get into equipment. For equipment, we have Varre's Bouquet plus 10, any seal will do. We have the white mask on and the War Surgeon set to go with the whole Varre theme, Dragoncrest Greatshield, Talisman, Lord of Blood's Exultation, Rotten Wing Sword Insignia. We have the Shard of Alexander, and then we have the defense tier along with the faith tier, so we can do some buffs as well. It'll give you 10 levels, as I mentioned, of faith, which will allow you to do any buffs that you want to do, like Golden Vow, Blessings Boon, and Flame Grant Me Strength. Now let's get into stats. And for stats, for the 150 stats, I didn't even bother to go that high in dex, because I had tried this already on one of my main characters with like 80 dexterity and 60 arcane, and the damage wasn't even that much better because it's so negligible. So I ended up going for 30 dexterity and went for high arcane with 60 to get the maximum bleed buildup that I can possibly get, and then throw the blood grease on top of that. For a decent amount of vigor in mind as well, and everything else as far as that is up to you. Let's get into buffs. For buffs, we're drinking our tier first, which has the longest duration. Then we're using Golden Vow. Then we're going to use Blessings Boon. Then the last thing we're going to use is Flame Grant Me Strength. Then we're going to fill up our FP, and then of course we're going to add some blood grease, and then we could do the blood tax move or any number of hits to do massive bleed buildup and not a lot of damage. So that announcement is, since the Discord is growing, we're going to be doing a weekly challenge. It's going to be small stuff to begin with, like a little bit of like promotions and bragging rights, maybe a mention and stuff like that. So far, it's just going to be for fun mainly, but we're going to see where this goes. The first weekly challenge, by the way, is going to be beating any main game boss, Great Rune, with just Varre's Bouquet solo. Good luck with this one. This weapon honestly is not that good. Should be a lot of fun, and be sure to join the Discord as well. If you love overpowered PvE builds, definitely check out all the awesome builds that are on the channel, and as always, I will catch you guys there.